everyone. Welcome everyone. My name is Diharab Jetunga, and this is a talk on the careers in the field of computer graphics. I'll be going through everything you need to break into the industry and give you some tips that I've gathered along my own journey. So before we get started, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'm a graphics engineer at Imagination Technologies. Previously, I worked at Liveroom, as Durga mentioned. I've been working on a wide variety of things related to graphics. So my specialty is in real-time graphics. I work mostly in the desktop and mobile spaces, and I do a lot of work with ray tracing, which is a technique that is used to create very realistic-looking images. And I also do a lot of performance optimization for graphics. So that's a very brief view of what I do. Now I'll talk a bit about my company that I work for, Imagination. So it's a GPU IP company, meaning intellectual property. So what that means is that we create GPU, we actually design the GPU and then we license it to other companies that actually make the chips. So our GPUs have been used in desktop GPUs in the 90s. It's been used in the Sega Dreamcast. It's been used on the Sony PlayStation Vita, and on iPhones and on various Android phones, as well as on vehicles, on car dashboards and stuff. So I primarily work in the developer technology team. So in this team, we actually maintain the Imagination Technologies SDK, which is used by many different developers over the world. We also create graphics demos, which teaches developers the best practices when it comes to developing for our own GPUs. And we also help game developers to get the best performance, out of our GPUs. So that's a basic view of what I do at the company and as the company as a whole. So here's a look at some of the things that I've been working on at Imagination. So mainly all of my time has been dedicated to the Imagination Technologies ray tracing SDK. So here are some of the screenshots of like some of the demos that I've been working on. There's shadows demos that I've been working on recently, and here you can see our ray tracing demo in action. One of our demos, which is the mirror reflections demo. So yeah, these are some of the things that I've worked on. There are plenty more, but I can't really share them because of my contract. I can't really share some of the secret stuff that we work on with game developers, but this should probably give you a decent idea. So yeah, now let's talk a bit about what kind of fields you can find computer graphics in. So first of all, we all know that it's heavily used in the video games industry. There's plenty of jobs here, ranging from art to engineering, and there's quite a large demand as well for it. This is where I primarily work in, since my job relies on working with other game development studios. So yeah, and another prominent field is the film industry. So since modern films utilize a lot of visual effects and 3D rendering, there's a lot of demand for engineers and artists in this space as well. The rendering that happens in this space is more towards the offline side and not really real time. So there's a lot of path tracing, ray tracing, and things like that. And another area is automotive. So this is a space that's rather new compared to the previous two, but it's getting grown quite quickly. So it's mainly about 3D graphics within the dashboards of cars, things like that. And also, computer graphics is quite prominent in scientific and medical sectors too. So it's mainly used for visualization. So this is like a small set of the fields that are using computer graphics, but there are plenty of more, but I didn't want to put all of it into the presentation itself. So let's move on, and now let's talk about actual jobs that you can potentially do in this industry. So you have two main career paths. You can be an artist. So you can do things like sculpting, 3D modeling, texturing, animation, VFX, and all that stuff. Or you can be an engineer. So I'm more of an engineer, so I don't really know much about the art side. So I'll be focusing just on the engineering careers in this talk. So graphics engineering. What do we do here? So what we mainly do is we write software to draw 3D or 2D pictures. It can be on a PC, it can be on a mobile phone, a console, a server, or like anything. And it's a very high in demand job, but not many people are actually doing it because there's not a lot of like, I don't think it's taught well in most universities. So it's not really, there's not a lot of jobs going around for it. I mean, there's not a lot of people doing it, but there are plenty of jobs around. So that's the current situation of it. And it's spread across many different industries. You have the games industry, studios like Frostbite, Ubisoft, Naughty Dog, things like that. You have game technology companies which make game engines or game engine tools such as Unity, Unreal Engine, Rad game tools, and like other companies. I can't really think of anything right now, but yeah, things like that. You also have the film industry. So you have companies like Weta Digital, you have ILM, you have MPC Film. So these are all companies that mainly work with VFX for the film industry. So there's plenty of jobs in this sector as well. You have automotive, which is mainly companies that create the chipsets. So these are companies like Cruise, Renesas, NXP. These are some examples. And also you have your companies that make the GPUs themselves. So you have companies like AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, and they have plenty of jobs when it comes to graphics. So now that we know where we can find graphics engineering jobs, let's talk about what we do on a day-to-day basis on this field. So the most fun thing that we get to do is to create new graphical effects and techniques. So for example, one such thing that is done by most developers these days is adding ray tracing to their engine. So you had things like ray trace reflections, shadows, things like that. So this is something that most studios that we talk to are actually interested in, and they actually do a lot of work with ray tracing. Companies like Unity, Lumberyard, another company like Tencent from China. They're all very keen on this technology. So this is something that's quite hot these days. And another example is things like post-processing effects. So you have ambient occlusion, depth of field, these kinds of things. These are very fun to add. It's a very relaxing, quite fun work to do. And another part of the job is bugs, lots and lots of bugs. So this is something we deal with a lot because rendering engines are very complicated beasts. So they tend to have a ton of problems, and it's our job to find the solutions to them. So like a common cause for these problems is in the graphics drivers, especially on the mobile space, especially on Android. There's a lot of problems with the drivers because the driver quality can be very different. So that's something you have to keep in mind. And so we also have to make different hacks to work with different GPUs. So there's a lot of problems when it comes to bugs and specific GPUs. So that's something we typically have to do with. And we spend a lot of time looking at errors like this. So that's a very common thing we stare at. These are called timeout bugs. These are very problematic, very fun to deal with. And another huge part of the job is with measuring performance and optimizing your code. So especially this is very critical in the games industry because you have a strict target when it comes to performance, like 60 FPS or something like that. So you have to absolutely try to hit that target as often as possible. And it makes up a huge part of the job. So we spend a lot of time looking at tools like this. So on the left, you have RenderDoc, which is like a graphics debugger. And on the right, we have NVIDIA's Nsight, which is great for checking performance of different hardware and stuff. So yeah, we actually spend a lot of time looking at these kinds of tools. And finally, we sometimes also write tools for artists to use. This is common in smaller game studios, but it isn't exactly done in like large studios because they have their own tools programmers. So yeah, that kind of sums up the work that we do. Now we can take a look at what skills you need to get into the industry itself. So to start off, you need to have some basic programming knowledge. It's mainly in C or C++. You can do graphics programming in any language, such as Java or JavaScript or whatever. But if you're hoping to work in the industry, learning C++ is an absolute must because pretty much every code base is in C or C++, and you actually have to dig very deep into it as a graphics engineer. So this is something you really, really need to know. You also need some knowledge of basic algorithms and data structures, things like sorting, searching, data structure stuff. Thankfully, this is taught in most IT and CS degrees in Sri Lanka. So I think you might already have this knowledge. So yeah, we can go ahead. The next skill is in maths. There's a lot of maths in graphics. Pretty much everything is done with like maths. There's a lot of linear algebra. So things like vectors, matrices, coordinate systems are things you need to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So these are topics that you need to brush up on. I will go into some more details where you can study these in the next slides, but can move on now. And the most important skill, however, is learning a graphics API. So this is how you talk with the GPU. It sort of forms the backbone of real-time graphics. So you can choose from any of the following APIs. You can choose between OpenGL, Metal, Vulkan, DirectX 12. But I personally recommend OpenGL for beginners as it is the simplest one. Vulkan and DirectX 12 are extremely complicated APIs and take a lot of time to master, but it is the current standard of the industry. But you should start with OpenGL or something simpler and then work your way towards Vulkan or DirectX 12. And finally, you should study the hardware architecture of the GPU that you own. This knowledge will help you optimize your code to perform as best as possible on the target GPU. So AMD and all the other companies, they usually release papers about their hardware. So you should read them and get an idea of how your GPU actually works, because this is knowledge that you really, really need. And this is something that even we study daily, because we need to keep up our knowledge, because your code has to run perfectly on that hardware. So this is something that you need to learn. So if you have like a AMD GPU on your hardware, on your PC, then you should probably read that paper and get an idea of how that hardware works. Yeah, this is something that you should definitely consider. So now that you know what the skills are, here are some books that I will recommend on these subjects. So for maths, I recommend this book called 3D Math Primer for graphics and game development. And it's a great place to learn all the math skills that you need for graphics. It covers everything from start to finish. It's a very good book. I'm pretty sure you can find a PDF or something online, so shouldn't be a problem. The next one is Real-Time Rendering 4th edition. This is kind of like the graphics, like the place where you can learn all your techniques and stuff, because this is such an important book, and it contains all the techniques that you will need to learn computer graphics from start to finish. It does get a bit technical at the end, but it should be a good start. And the other one is physically based rendering. This is good if you want to get into the film industry, because this deals with very realistic types of rendering, such as path tracing and everything. So maybe consider this if you want to get into that sector. But otherwise, those two books should be fine. There are plenty of other books as well. I just didn't have space to cram all of them into the slide. But yeah, film quality photorealistic rendering. That's the gist of this book. So the place that I personally recommend that you start with is with learnopengl.com. This is where actually I got my start as well. It will teach you all the things you need to learn about OpenGL. all the math that is required, and all the theory and techniques about graphics as well. So if you finish all the chapters on this, you will have a solid like base in this in this place, and you will be ready to go deeper into the subject. So yeah, I think doing this this thing would be a very good start to your career in graphics. After this, you can start learning a low-level graphics API such as Vulkan or DirectX 12, since this is most commonly used in the graphics industry now. I actually haven't used OpenGL in months because it's not used that often now. And you can also read research papers on different graphics techniques. This is something that you also need to do. It's kind of hard at first, I mean, at the beginning, because the language is pretty complicated, but after you read the paper like 5 or 6 times, you can start to understand things. And I actually do recommend doing this because there are new techniques that come out every week or something like that. So it's quite important. And you should also try to read blog posts from other graphics engineers from the industry, because they do share knowledge a lot, and yeah, it's a great place to learn. And the other topic, and the most important one, is to make your own personal projects. So this is what we'll talk about in the next slide. So how do we create a portfolio? So graphics graphics is a very visual thing. So you can't just have a CV. A CV is not enough by itself. So you need to make small projects to demonstrate your skills and like make a portfolio for yourself. So you can do things like you can create a small game from scratch, like a very tiny game like Pong or something like that, like a very small game. Or you can create a simple simple engine to like show some graphics, like a simple path tracer or a real-time render or something like that, something simple. You can also create samples for different research papers that you read, which is also very good, and it's something that most people like to see in newcomers. And so here are some projects that I've worked on in the past. So this is a rendering engine that I released recently called Helios. It's a path tracer that runs on the GPU. And it's another project that I worked on recently. It's for rendering ocean waves. And here's another one, which is for a GPU particle simulation. And this one is a light map baking project that I wrote with OpenGL, I think. I remember exactly, but yeah, you can check them out on GitHub if you want. But yeah, you should. So what you should do is you should put all of these projects onto your GitHub, because it's basically your portfolio. And most people actually check this when they are looking for new recruits. And optionally, you should set up a blog post or like a personal website to showcase your projects, which is also very good. And you should link this to your CV, so you can make sure that they see all of your projects. And GitHub.io is actually a free option for making a blog or your own portfolio. So now let's talk about landing your first job in the graphics industry. So first thing I actually recommend you do is to join the graphics community in Twitter. So most of the graphics engineers in the world actually are on Twitter, and they love to talk about graphics. They love to teach newcomers and stuff like that. So you should probably join. And this is where I actually got my start as well. And it's a great place to network, meet new people, and to stay in touch. And they're also willing to help people. So you can ask questions. I've actually asked tons of questions from these guys, and they've been very helpful to help me learn different techniques and things like that. And one thing you should consider doing is sharing your progress, things like screenshots and videos from your personal projects on Twitter and LinkedIn. And this is extremely important. Like you will get tons of job offers from this alone. Like I've personally gotten like job offers through Twitter and LinkedIn because of this. So whenever you start a project, just keep sharing your progress with the other people in the graphics industry, because they love to see these, and they love to talk to people who actually work on these things. And yeah, it's a great way to network and a great way to get jobs as well. Yeah, it will attract attention from recruiters and senior engineers alike. So yeah, that's very important. And yes, you'll get plenty of interview invites. And yeah, next thing you should do is start applying for jobs. So the two places that I recommend is like LinkedIn or Glassdoor. These places have really good jobs on graphics. And one thing you may notice is that most of the jobs are not in Sri Lanka. So the only one that you can really find in Sri Lanka is in Liveroom, which is where I started as well. So you can try that. But yeah, so you can also check the jobs page on most of the most of the places that you like for example, if you like to have a job at like AMD, then you can check their website and check the jobs page there, things like that. You can make sure to check their jobs pages and things like that. And if you fail at first, don't worry, just keep trying. I think I've actually applied for like 20 jobs during like 2018 itself, and I got some of them. I failed a lot of them. So it's like don't worry about it. Yeah, I failed a lot of job interviews initially, but it's always good practice to fail. There's no shame in it. And just keep trying, because graphics interviews are hard. Just gotta keep at it and just gotta keep practicing, and you'll eventually land a job. So I'll tell you a bit about my story, the way I got my job. So I was initially approached by a recruiter from Imagination on LinkedIn. And I actually interviewed for a position in the graphics driver team, and I failed miserably because I was not prepared for drivers, and I didn't really have a proper interest in drivers either. I don't know why I did it. It was a dumb decision. Don't do that. But what I did next was I actually tried again for the developer technology team, which seemed more like my skill set. And what do you know, I passed that interview. So after that, the company started to assist with the visa relocation, and that's something that they usually do. Most of these companies. So this is something you can expect. So yeah, that's typically how it works when it comes to jobs from different countries. So yeah, so now let's consider that you've gotten into the graphics industry. You're in. Yay. Now what do we do? So graphics is a field that is evolving really fast. It's a very fast field, and it's constantly changing. So you actually need to keep your knowledge up to date. So how do you do this? So there's a few ways. One thing is you can read blog posts from well-known graphics programmers. So I've listed a few here. One of them is Matt Coutinho from Ready at Dawn. They are a studio that worked on a lot of PlayStation games, and there's also Fabian Giesen, who is a veteran from the graphics scene. He's been around for like 30 years or something. He has a lot of good knowledge on his website. Yeah, so there are plenty of blog posts that you can read for keeping your skills sharp. And this is especially possible if you're on Twitter, because these graphics programmers do share their blog posts. So that's a good way to stay up to date on the field. The other thing is, of course, reading and implementing new research papers. This is something that everyone does, like even the most, even like very experienced programmers do this, because you actually need to keep your skills sharp, and you need to read new things, you need to learn. So it's something that you need to keep doing. One site you can use to get papers is the Journal of Computer Graphics Techniques. This is very good. They have a lot of new papers, and they publish papers on like every month or something. So it's pretty good. And you also have the SIGGRAPH publications, which are always really good. You can find some good papers in this blog post that I've linked. They actually have the most of the good ones there, so you can start there. And the other thing is, you should build your network. This is also very important, because it increases your chances of getting jobs in the future. And one way you can do this is to attend industry events if possible. So this includes things like GDC, just the Game Developers Conference, which happens in San Francisco every year. And the other one is SIGGRAPH, which happens, I think it happens all over the world. And Eurographics, which is a graphics conference that happens in Europe, as the name suggests. So yeah, this basically covers all of the knowledge that I can share with you. This is pretty much all the tips that I can give you, and this is basically what I did to get into the industry. So I hope that you find this helpful, and you have all the basic knowledge you need to dive in and start doing graphics. So have fun, and yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to Liveroom for getting me to do this talk. And if you have any further questions, you can ask me now, or you can ask me on Twitter at DRW94. Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dehara. So yeah, it's time for, as you told, it's time for questions. If you have any questions, you can on your mic and ask, or you can drop in the chat box, or you can use Slido as I sent in the chat box mail. Yeah, anyone willing to raise a question? Oh yeah, so Dehara, there are two questions. Let me share my screen initially, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. I think I stopped sharing my screen then.
So the first question is like, hope you can see my screen. So the first question is like, when did you realize that learning computer graphics is going to lead a great career path? Like, what motivated you?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Well, I didn't really think about that. I just liked video games. So since I was a kid, I've been into games. So I've been wanting to like make games. So I didn't really know whether it was a good career or not, but I was just lucky in the fact that it actually was a very good job that is well paid. So I guess I just kind of lucked out there. But yeah, I was into games as a kid, and I've been curious about computer graphics since I was young. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why I wanted to do graphics. So I did realize that it was a good path when I was when I started to learn graphics in like 2015. I did look at the job positions, and I looked at the different I actually looked at the pays and how the jobs were paying, and I actually saw that they were paying really well for graphics engineers. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I chose this, and kind of how I wanted to do graphics. But I think there was another question. I think you stopped sharing your screen.
Yeah, so actually let me read it out. So
yeah, sure,
what are the best game engines? So what are the best game engines for 2D game development for a beginner? What do you think?
Right. 2D game development. I think one engine is I guess Unity is pretty good for 2D stuff, because it's like the engine has a lot of documentation, and there's a big there's like a big scene in YouTube, so there's a lot of lessons and stuff you can learn from, so that's good. There's also another engine called GameMaker. I think it's called GameMaker. I'm actually not that into games that are 2D, so I think GameMaker is the engine. That's also pretty good. There's also another engine which is called Godot, Godot. Godot. It's actually pronounced Godot or Godot. I can't really remember. That's a pretty good engine for 2D as well. Yeah, I think those are pretty good if you want to start off. Yeah, I think that would be my answer. I haven't really done a lot of research when it comes to 2D engines, so yeah. But
Okay, that's cool. So I think there is a few more questions. Let me read it out too. I'm sorry about the. So another question asked was, does movie studios hire graphics engineers? What do you think? Like movie studios?
yeah, so that's actually a good question, because, and the answer is yes, they do, because in most studios, so by movie studios, actually the movie studios themselves don't hire it, but the VFX studios do, like the companies that make the 3D graphics and stuff for movies, they actually do, because these companies do have their own tools, and they have their own, there's some companies such as Disney have their own, they have their own engines that they render with. So they actually need to have engineers that do these programming stuff. And I actually do have a few friends in the UK that were working on those kinds of technologies. Like one of those engineers that I know actually worked on Avengers Endgame, I think. So yeah, they do hire those kinds of people as graphics engineers. So yeah, the film industry is a good career for graphics engineers.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I think after everyone heard Avengers, I think most of them will be showing much interest for sure. So there's a next question. So are there any specific graphic engines or VR headsets?
So not really, because I think most of the big engines do support VR, and they have VR rendering capability. So there's nothing specific. I think I remember reading about like one VR specific engine, but it never went anywhere. So I think you can just use Unity or like Unreal or whatever, since they all work with VR just fine. So
Okay.
yeah, I would answer that.
Okay, that's cool. So there is also like a few more questions. If you don't, that might take a little bit of your
Fine.
time.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on new UE5?
So that's Unreal Engine 5. So
Yeah.
I think it's pretty impressive, and we have a lot. I actually, like, the whole scene has been talking about this engine, and because they're actually doing like a lot of things that are very unique. Like they have their own GI system, which is quite crazy. Like it's like crazy good, and yeah, I think they might like. I think this engine might be the next big thing in graphics and in game development, because yeah, there are some really good technologies in it. Like they have a new pipeline for rendering 3D models with lots of triangles. So it's like it's a very good engine. There's a lot of cool tech behind it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty big thing. I actually did try it out because there's an early access period right now, so I did try it out, and it's pretty insane. I actually didn't look at the code yet, so I can't really comment much about the technology itself. But yeah, it looks great, and it seems like everyone else loves it too. All the other graphics engineers that I've been talking to, they've been hyped about this. So yeah.
So the next question is going to be like the most, like expected question, and also
Right.
the question really wanted to know. Everyone wanted to know, like, what are the salary ranges in the field? Like,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. That's a good question. So the salary ranges in, like, for example, in the US would be like you can expect like 100,000 US dollars. I think that's like a decent range. Like for a beginner, it would be like 80,000, and these are pretty good salaries. I don't really know what the ranges are in like other countries, but for example, in the UK, you would start off at like 30. Like for a very junior engineer, you would start off at like 30,000 pounds a year, which is like which is pretty decent when it comes to the games industry and the graphics industry. But like in the high end, you would get from like up to like, I don't know, 80,000 pounds, like well, not 80,000, maybe like 60,000, and like for like a senior engineer. So yeah, there's a like the money is actually very good when it comes to graphics engineering. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you actually want to check the salary ranges, like the best place that I could recommend is Glassdoor. So when you go to glassdoor.com, you can actually check the prices. Like you can check the jobs and their the money that they pay for each position, and you can get a decent average there. So yeah, if you are interested in like a job, just check Glassdoor for the job for the salaries.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you so much. So there is also one question, like, so one has asked, like, there is one of his friends, one of the participants' friend, who doesn't hold degree, but he's highly talented and like looking forward to learn more regarding technologies. So even though he doesn't like have a degree and like he's really talented and can be self-taught, like, is there any possibility for him to start a job in the game developing area or computer graphics industry field?
Yeah, definitely. Because so in the graphics and game development industry, they don't really ask for like a BSc or like anything. I mean, some jobs do, but if you have the skills, if you can prove your skills, then you can definitely like get a job. Like so, like the trick is to make your own projects. Like I mentioned in the slides, you have to make your own personal projects and stuff like that. And if you have a decent if you have a decent CV, and if your GitHub looks nice, and if you have a bunch of projects and small games or whatever that you've made, then that's definitely more than enough to land a job. I've actually known a few people who've started in different industries and have moved into graphics and stuff like that. And some companies do want the bachelor's degree or something like that, but it's like it's like not a strict thing, so you can get past it. So yeah, I would recommend him to work on his own projects in his spare time and build his portfolio. That's definitely possible. Yeah.
I think like this would be a last question. Did you dive into your this industry based on university education or by self-learning, which will be the major reason?
Oh, it's like it's like pretty much 99% of it was completely taught by myself. It was like all self-taught, because I did not learn graphics in the university, and I was taught basic C++ there, but it was not enough to like get into graphics. So I actually had to learn like most of the like the deep stuff by myself. I actually had to learn teach myself some C++ and C, and then I had to dive into graphics from scratch. So yeah, I mean, I don't like the degree really doesn't matter. So you just have to study yourself. So you have to learn, you have to follow these these books, these websites. There's plenty of lessons on like graphics and on game development. So you can follow these lessons and stuff. So yeah, it's like completely self-taught. Apart from the basics that I learned in university, which is stuff that I think you will all learn if from a CS or a SC or an IT degree or something. So yeah, that should be that should be enough to get you started, and then the rest of the way you have to go by yourself by studying studying these books and all these material, research papers and all that. Yeah.
So yeah, it's basically mostly self-taught. So those are the like I think there is a few more questions. So that is 23 years old too old to start learning and becoming a game developer? I think the age doesn't matter.
There's no age cutoff. I think I started learning when I was 23. I think I started learning at 23 actually. 5 years ago. No, I was 22. I think. Yeah, but yeah, I'm 27 now. So it was like 5 years ago I started learning. So within five years, I actually got to this point. So well, no, not exactly. Actually, within 3 years. No, actually, it was 4 years, something like that. Sorry, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't take. I mean, your age doesn't really matter. You can start at any time as long as you have the dedication because yeah, it's like it's a field that you need a lot of passion for. You need to have the passion to study on your own time, on your spare time, and yeah, it's if you have the love for the field, you can definitely get into it. There's no age doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's true. So I hope everyone will agree with that. And moving on to next question. What do you think about AI rendering, and can we teach AI rendering to render 3D graphics? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question.
can they include it as a module? Yeah.
So AI is not really my area of specialty, but so AI is used in the field of graphics a lot. Like for example, most recently with NVIDIA, because they had a thing called DLSS, which stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling, and they basically render an image at a very low resolution, and they use their AI to upscale it to 4K or 8K or whatever. So it's a pretty cool technique, and it's all driven by machine learning and AI. But I don't really know if there has been any advances when it comes to 3D rendering. I think there have been. I don't really keep up with it because I'm not much of a machine learning and AI person, so I don't really keep track of it. But yeah, there's definitely been some strides in that area. Yeah, there's a lot of papers coming out when it comes to mix machine learning with rendering techniques and stuff. I don't really know enough to answer that question thoroughly, but the vague answer is yes. They are. I mean, I think yes to it. Whatever the question was, but yeah, sorry, I don't really know much about AI.
That's all right. Yeah, Mr. Vigar. So hopefully that's it. So I think it looks like we've covered all the questions, and hope everyone's question was answered accordingly. So before wrap up, Mr. Dehar, is there anything else you wanted to cover before wrapping up? Yeah.
Not really. Just start working on your own projects. I think that's all I can. That's all the advice I can give you. Start learning. Start working on your own stuff in your spare time. Make it a hobby. That'll be enough to get you in.